Interstate 20, Louisiana, November 4th, 2001, 2:47 a.m., 6 Pro Bowls, 3 Super Bowl rings, number 61 in Dallas Cowboys history. But tonight, Nate Newton wasn't wearing any of those numbers. Tonight, it was 213, the pounds of marijuana in his van. Just 6 weeks earlier, it had been 175 pounds in Texas, 388 pounds total, the same weight he once carried as he protected Troy Aikman, the same weight that made him a legend. Now, it was making him a felon. From the Great Wall of Dallas to the concrete walls of federal prison. This is the story of the most shocking fall in Cowboys history. How does a man go from protecting quarterbacks to running drugs across state lines? Sometimes the hardest hits come after you leave the field. Before being a Dallas Cowboys legend, Nate Newton was just another undrafted kid from Florida A&M University in 1983. Standing 6 feet 3 inches tall but weighing over 350 pounds, scouts said he was too heavy for the NFL. His phone never rang during draft day, but what they saw as excess weight, Newton would transform into pure football power. In the spring of 1984, the fledgling USFL's Tampa Bay Bandits took a chance on Newton. Head coach Steve Spurrier, known for his eye for unconventional talent, spotted something special. Within months, Newton wasn't just playing, he was dominating. His massive frame moved with surprising agility, creating holes wide enough to drive trucks through. At the Bandits training facility, Newton's presence became larger than life, and not just because of his size. The equipment manager couldn't find pants that fit him properly. When teammates would gather in the dining hall, Newton's appetite became legendary. "Man's got a whole kitchen in there," defensive end Fred Dean joked one day, watching Newton pile his plate high. The nickname stuck. The Kitchen was born. 1989 marked the turning point. Jimmy Johnson, fresh from Miami Hurricanes' success, had taken over the Cowboys. Johnson didn't see an overweight lineman, he saw untapped potential. During Newton's tryout, he pancaked 3 defensive linemen in succession. Johnson turned to his assistant and said words that would change Cowboys history. "That's our new guard, right there." What happened next would reshape not just Newton's life, but the entire landscape of NFL offensive line play. The undrafted kid who couldn't get a phone call on draft day was about to become part of something much bigger than himself. By 1992, the Dallas Cowboys had assembled what would become the most dominant offensive line in NFL history. Nate Newton anchored the left guard position, flanked by Mark Tuinei at tackle and Mark Stepnoski at center. Eric Williams and John Gesek completed the right side. This wasn't just an offensive line, it was a fortress. The nickname Great Wall of Dallas wasn't just clever marketing, it was a testament to their impenetrable protection. The wall's foundation was built on Newton's extraordinary ability to both pass protect and run block. At 325 pounds, he could hold his ground against the strongest defensive tackles, yet possessed the agility to pull on sweeps and traps. During the 1992 season, the line allowed only 23 sacks across 16 games. For comparison, the league average that year was 42 sacks. Super Bowl 27 against the Buffalo Bills marked Newton's first championship appearance. On January 31, 1993, the Cowboys' offensive line dominated, allowing 0 sacks and paving the way for 137 rushing yards. One play defined Newton's impact. With 4:56 left in the third quarter, he pulled left on a counter, clearing out 3 Bills defenders to spring Emmitt Smith for a crucial 21-yard gain. Final score, Cowboys 52, Bills 17. The following year, Super Bowl 28 showcased Newton's versatility. Against the Bills' restructured defense, he demonstrated his football IQ by recognizing and calling out defensive shifts pre-snap. The Cowboys' offensive line adjusted to Buffalo's new schemes, leading to Emmitt Smith's 132-yard, 2-touchdown performance. Newton's crucial block on Bruce Smith, Buffalo's Hall of Fame defensive end, in the fourth quarter, sealed the 30-13 victory. Super Bowl 30 in 1996 completed the trilogy. Facing the Pittsburgh Steelers' vaunted Blitzburgh defense, Newton and the line faced their toughest challenge. The Steelers' zone blitz scheme had terrorized offenses all season, but Newton's ability to pick up complex stunts and delayed blitzes kept Troy Aikman clean during crucial drives. The Cowboys prevailed 27-17, securing their place in history. Newton's 6 Pro Bowl selections, 1992 to 1996, 1998, weren't mere popularity contests. Each year told its own story of dominance. In 1992, he allowed only 2.5 sacks all season. 1993 saw him grade out at 91% efficiency in run blocking, the highest among all guards that year. The 1994 season showcased his durability, playing 1,023 consecutive snaps without allowing a single sack. The most impressive Pro Bowl season came in 1995, when Newton achieved what coaches called the perfect game against the Philadelphia Eagles' renowned defense. 0 sacks, 0 pressures, 0 penalties across 76 offensive snaps. This performance earned him the NFL's Offensive Lineman of the Week award, a rare honor for a guard. Newton's relationship with Troy Aikman and Emmitt Smith transcended typical teammate bonds. Aikman often called Newton his personal bodyguard, trusting him so completely that he would focus downfield even when pressure came from Newton's side. The statistics tell the story. During Newton's peak years, 1992 to 1996, Aikman was sacked only 14 times from Newton's assigned gap responsibility. For Emmitt Smith, Newton was more than a blocker. He was a path creator. Smith's record-breaking rushing achievements were built on Newton's ability to create lanes where none seemed possible. During Smith's 4 rushing titles, 1991 to 1993, 1995, he averaged 5.1 yards per carry running behind Newton's position. Their signature play, the left side counter, became nearly unstoppable, averaging 6.3 yards per attempt during the 1995 season. Newton's mastery wasn't just physical, it was psychological. He studied defensive tendencies so thoroughly that he could often call out opponents' plays before they happened. This intelligence, combined with his raw power, made him the cornerstone of an offensive line that would define an era of NFL football. When Nate Newton played his final NFL snap in 1999, at age 38, the transition hit harder than any defensive lineman ever had. For 15 years, his life had been structured around practice schedules, game plans, and the rhythmic certainty of NFL seasons. Every Sunday had meant 70,000 screaming fans. Every morning had meant purpose. Now, in the quiet of retirement, those crowds became echoes, and that purpose began to fade. Newton's daily routine, once filled with team meetings and practice drills, now stretched before him like an empty field. The adjustment proved devastating. In a 2002 court testimony, Newton would later reveal that he spent most days watching television, reliving old games, and struggling to find direction. His weight, always a challenge during his playing days, began creeping up again without the rigorous training schedule to keep it in check. The former Pro Bowler's struggles mirrored a darker pattern among retired NFL players. Studies from the NFL Players Association showed that nearly 78% of NFL players either went bankrupt or faced serious financial stress within 2 years of retirement. Newton's story was becoming a textbook case of this phenomenon. Despite earning approximately $13 million during his NFL career, Newton's financial situation deteriorated rapidly after retirement. The lifestyle he'd maintained as a star player, the massive house in Dallas, the luxury cars, the generous support to family members, suddenly became unsustainable. Child support payments for his 4 children added to the mounting pressure. Property taxes on his 6,000-square-foot home in Dallas reached $24,000 annually. Insurance payments on his 3 vehicles totaled over $8,000 per year. These fixed costs, combined with a lack of steady income, created a perfect storm of financial distress. By early 2001, Newton had depleted most of his savings and was facing multiple liens on his property. Unlike some players who transitioned into coaching or broadcasting, Newton struggled to find his post-career niche. Several business ventures, including a failed restaurant attempt in 2000, only deepened his financial wounds. The man who once commanded million-dollar contracts found himself wrestling with basic household expenses. Perhaps the most insidious aspect of Newton's fall wasn't financial, it was psychological. The transformation from the kitchen, the beloved Cowboys star, to just another retired player proved overwhelming. In later interviews, Newton would describe this period as losing myself. His identity had been so thoroughly intertwined with football that its absence left a void no amount of money could fill. The routine validation that came with being a professional athlete, the media attention, fan adoration, and peer respect vanished almost overnight. Newton's social circle, once filled with teammates and coaches, shrank dramatically. The camaraderie of the locker room was replaced by solitary days at home. Even his nickname, the Kitchen, once a source of pride, became a painful reminder of glory days slipping away. This identity crisis manifested in increasingly erratic behavior. Newton began avoiding public appearances, missing team alumni events, and withdrawing from former teammates. His weight fluctuated dramatically, at one point reaching 411 pounds.
In a particularly revealing moment during a 2001 interview, just months before his arrest, Newton admitted, "Sometimes I wake up and forget I'm not playing anymore. Then reality hits, and it hits hard." The combination of financial pressure, loss of structure, and identity crisis created a perfect storm. Newton, like many retired players, found himself searching for something, anything, to fill the void left by football. This search would eventually lead him down a path that would shock the NFL community and transform his legacy forever. As 2001 approached its final months, Newton stood at a crossroads. The decisions he would make next would not only alter his life, but would serve as a cautionary tale about the devastating impact of post-career transition in professional sports. The white van cruising down Interstate 35 near Waxahachie, Texas, looked unremarkable. Behind its wheel sat Nate Newton, the former Dallas Cowboys star, just 30 miles south of the stadium where he'd once dominated defensive lines. Texas state troopers noticed the van drifting slightly over the white line, a minor traffic violation that would unravel everything. The routine traffic stop turned into anything but routine when drug-sniffing dogs alerted officers to the cargo area. Inside, carefully packed in duffel bags, lay 175 pounds of marijuana. The street value, $700,000. Newton, who had once protected quarterbacks from rushing defenders, now found himself in handcuffs, facing up to 20 years in prison. But Newton's story was far from over. Just 6 weeks after posting bail in Texas, Newton was driving east on Interstate 20 in Louisiana. This time, he wasn't alone. His associate, Billy Crenshaw, rode in the passenger seat. At 2:47 a.m., Louisiana State Police stopped their vehicle near Shreveport. Inside the van, officers discovered an even larger haul, 213 pounds of marijuana, worth approximately $800,000. The second arrest stunned both law enforcement and the sports world. Newton had escalated his operation while out on bail from his first arrest. DEA investigators would later reveal that Newton had been running a drug trafficking operation between Texas and Louisiana, using his NFL fame to deflect suspicion. His routes mirrored the same highways he'd once traveled for away games. The federal courthouse in Dallas saw a different Nate Newton than fans remembered. Gone was the jovial giant who'd protected Troy Aikman. In his place sat a man in an orange jumpsuit, facing the consequences of his actions. The prosecution painted a picture of a calculated drug trafficker, presenting evidence of multiple drug runs and sophisticated operation methods. Newton's defense team, led by attorney Howard Anderson, argued that their client's fall from grace stemmed from post-career depression and financial desperation. They presented character witnesses, including former Cowboys teammates, who spoke of Newton's contributions to youth football programs and community service. On August 20, 2002, federal judge Jorge Solis delivered the sentence, 30 months in federal prison. The courtroom fell silent as Newton stood to hear his fate. The same hands that had earned 3 Super Bowl rings were now being fitted for handcuffs. Judge Solis addressed Newton directly. Mr. Newton, you had everything: fame, fortune, the adoration of millions. You chose to throw it all away for quick money. This court cannot ignore the severity of trafficking nearly 400 pounds of marijuana across state lines. The total street value of both seizures, $1.5 million, represented more than Newton's annual NFL salary at his peak. But the true cost went far beyond money. His NFL pension was jeopardized. Legal fees mounted to over $200,000. The beautiful home in Dallas would be sold to cover debts. Every touchdown he'd helped create, every Pro Bowl selection, now seemed to fade behind the shadow of his crimes. Newton's final words to the court revealed the depth of his fall. "I'm not standing here as number 61 of the Dallas Cowboys. I'm standing here as Nathaniel Newton, a man who made terrible choices. The same competitive drive that made me great on the field led me down this dark path when the games ended." As Newton was led away to begin his sentence at the Federal Correctional Institution in Fort Worth, he left behind not just his freedom, but a legacy forever tarnished. The man who had once been part of the Great Wall of Dallas would now face walls of a very different kind. The Federal Correctional Institution in Fort Worth, Texas, became Nate Newton's home in January 2003. The same hands that once held Super Bowl trophies now counted commissary items. His cell, measuring 8 by 12 feet, could have fit in his former Dallas mansion's walk-in closet. Inmate number 34,375-177 had replaced his cherished number 61.
For the first 3 months, Newton barely left his cell except for mandatory activities. The former NFL star who once commanded stadiums now struggled with the shame of his fall. Fellow inmates recognized him, of course. Some even had his football cards. The guards, many longtime Cowboys fans, maintained professional distance while watching this giant of the game adjust to institutional life. In prison, Newton's daily schedule became rigidly structured, but in a way that oddly echoed his NFL days. Wake up at 6 a.m., breakfast at 6:30 a.m., work detail from 7:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. The discipline he once applied to football playbooks now went into learning prison regulations. His job assignment in the facility's laundry room, a far cry from the glamour of Texas Stadium, paid 12 cents an hour. Newton's physical transformation began almost immediately, though not by choice. Gone were the massive portions that had earned him the nickname, the kitchen. Prison meals were strictly portioned, and commissary privileges were limited. The man who had once proudly carried 365 pounds through NFL trenches found himself facing an unexpected challenge: forced portion control. By the end of his first year, Newton had lost 75 pounds. Unlike his playing days, where weight was power, this weight loss became a symbol of his transformation. He began to embrace the change, turning the prison's small recreation yard into his personal training ground. Fellow inmates watched as the former Pro Bowler adapted his NFL workouts to prison limitations, using basic calisthenics and running in place to continue his transformation. As the pounds melted away, Newton discovered something unexpected: clarity. Without the constant pressure to maintain his massive playing weight, without the lifestyle that had led to his downfall, he began to see his life through a new lens. By the time he dropped to 275 pounds, his lowest weight since college, Newton had developed a new relationship with self-control that extended beyond just food. In the stillness of his cell, Newton faced his demons. During mandatory counseling sessions, he began to unravel the complex threads that had led to his downfall. The counselor, Dr. Maria Rodriguez, helped him understand how the loss of his NFL identity had created a void he'd tried to fill with criminal activity. The same competitive drive that had made him an NFL star had twisted into something destructive when the cheering stopped. Newton spent hours writing in journals, a practice suggested by his counselors. In one entry, later shared in a post-release interview, he wrote, "The walls around me aren't my real prison. My real prison was the one I built myself, with pride, with fear of irrelevance, with the inability to accept that Nate Newton could be something more than just a football player." Through group therapy sessions, Newton encountered other former athletes who had struggled with post-career transitions. Their stories helped him understand that his experience, while unique in its details, followed a pattern common to many who had lost their professional identity. He began mentoring younger inmates, sharing his story as a cautionary tale about the dangers of pride and the importance of preparing for life after success. By the final months of his sentence, Newton had emerged as a different man, physically, mentally, and spiritually. The transformation went far deeper than his dramatic weight loss. He had discovered something that had eluded him throughout his NFL career and subsequent fall: genuine self-awareness. As he would later tell reporters, "In prison, I found freedom from who I thought I needed to be." When Nate Newton walked out of federal prison in 2004, he was literally half the man who had entered. His physical transformation, losing 175 pounds, mirrored a deeper metamorphosis. The former Cowboys star, once tipping the scales at over 400 pounds, now maintained a steady 260. He'd traded his nickname, The Kitchen, for a new identity: survivor and mentor. Newton's weight loss became more than just numbers on a scale. It represented shackles shed, both literal and metaphorical. His new physique demanded discipline he'd never known during his playing days. Every morning began with a 5-mile walk, followed by carefully portioned meals, a far cry from the massive portions that once fueled his NFL career. Local media in Dallas, who had once documented his fall, now chronicled his renaissance with headlines like "Newton's Law, Change or Perish." The broadcasting booth offered Newton an unexpected path to redemption. In 2006, ESPN Radio Dallas took a chance on the former player, bringing him in as a football analyst. His intimate knowledge of the game, combined with his raw honesty about his own failures, resonated with listeners. What could have been just another ex-player talking X's and O's became something more profound, a platform for authentic conversation about life after sports. His commentary style proved uniquely compelling. When discussing offensive line play, Newton could break down technical aspects with expertise, but he'd also weave in life lessons learned the hard way. During one memorable broadcast in 2008, analyzing a young player's off-field troubles, Newton paused and shared, "I see myself in these young men. They think they're invincible. I thought that too, until I was wearing orange and sleeping on a prison cot." Newton's most significant impact came through his work with young athletes. Beginning in 2007, he established a regular speaking circuit, visiting high schools and youth football programs across Texas. His message transcended sports. Standing before auditoriums filled with young faces, Newton would hold up his Super Bowl rings in one hand and his former prison ID in the other, powerful symbols of how quickly glory can turn to shame. At Dallas's Carter High School in 2009, Newton encountered a moment that would define his new mission. A young offensive lineman, struggling with weight issues and family problems, approached him after a talk. The boy's situation eerily mirrored Newton's own past. That conversation spawned Second Chance Choices, Newton's mentorship program focusing on at-risk athletes. By 2023, the program had reached over 15,000 young players. Today, Newton views his journey through a lens of hard-won wisdom. His Dallas home, modest compared to his former mansion, features a small office where he keeps 3 items: his Super Bowl rings, his prison release papers, and a scale. "These are my daily reminders," he says, "of who I was, who I became, and who I choose to be now." His relationship with the Cowboys organization has evolved into something deeper than his playing days. Rather than just appearing at alumni events, Newton serves as an unofficial counselor to retiring players, helping them navigate the treacherous waters of post-career transition. In 2022, the NFL Players Association recognized his work with their Second Chapter Award for Post-Career Achievement. The man who once commanded headlines for all the wrong reasons now makes news for transformation and service. When asked about his legacy in a 2024 interview, Newton reflected, "Football gave me fame. Prison gave me humility. But what I do now, helping others avoid my mistakes, that's giving me peace." The young Nate Newton wanted to be remembered as a great football player. This Nate Newton just wants to be remembered as a man who fell, got back up, and helped others stay on their feet. his story has become required viewing for NFL rookie symposiums, where Newton's journey from the Great Wall of Dallas to prison walls and back serves as both warning and inspiration. In the end, his greatest achievement may not be his Super Bowl rings or Pro Bowl selections, but the lives he's helped redirect through his own hard-learned lessons. Numbers defined Nate Newton's life. 388 pounds, his heaviest playing weight. 388 pounds, the total marijuana seized in his arrests. 175 pounds, what he lost in transformation. 3 Super Bowl rings. 2 federal charges. 1 remarkable story of redemption. In NFL history, only 4 players have earned 3 Super Bowl rings and served federal prison time, but only one transformed that fall into a mission that's touched thousands of lives. Newton's journey from the Great Wall of Dallas to prison walls wasn't just about football or crime. It was about the weight we all carry, the choices we make, and the power of second chances. Today, Newton still carries weight. Not the physical burden that once defined him, but the weight of responsibility. Every morning, he steps on a scale, not to monitor his size, but to remind himself of balance. Life, he says, is about finding the right weight to carry. Too much success can crush you just as surely as failure. In the end, perhaps Nate Newton's greatest victory wasn't on any football field. It was in the mirror, facing the man he'd become, and choosing to become something more. His story reminds us that it's not about how many times you fall, it's about how many times you get back up. The NFL counts Newton's statistics: 198 games played, 6 Pro Bowls, 3 championships. But his most important numbers are elsewhere: 15,000 young athletes mentored, countless lives touched, one day at a time. As Newton puts it, "I used to protect quarterbacks from getting hit. Now I protect kids from making the same hits I took in life." That's a better legacy than any ring could give me. If this story of redemption resonated with you, remember there are thousands more waiting to be told. Hit that subscribe button to join us on more journeys through sports' most powerful stories of transformation. And if you believe in second chances, show it with a like. Because sometimes, the greatest plays in life happen far from any field. This has been The Shocking Fall of a Cowboys Icon. A story about weight, the weight of glory, the weight of failure, and ultimately, the weight of redemption.